Alright, this is a video on how to work all the problems on the Lion version of our factoring test. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to find numbers t can equal when you square it, multiply by -27 to add 48 to equal 0. But to make this a little easier, I would see if you can factor out anything first. And notice this is only a binomial, but you have a negative term here. And then look at 27 and 48. Is there any numbers that that have a greatest common factor? So any numbers that go into it? Well, you need to know your factors. 27, the numbers that can go into 27 are 1, 3, 9, and 27. 1 and 27, 3 and 9. So then I look to see if there's any of them that go into 48. Well, 1 and 27 can't. 9 can't. So look at 3. 3 can go into 48. If you remember your divisibility rules, 4 plus 8 is 12. And 3 can go into 12, so that means 3 can go into 48. So I know right there that I can take a 3 out of both. And I'm going to go ahead and take this negative at the same time, because it's going to be easier if this a term is positive. So I'm going to factor out a -3 in both of these. So that's going to be left with a positive 9t squared minus, now you just have to do 48 divided by 3, and that is going to be 16 minus 16 equals 0. So I factored out, take out a GCF of -3. Now look at these two terms. This is a 9t squared minus 16. What do you know about 9 and 16 and then t squared? These are perfect squares. Also, there's a subtraction. So that means it's the difference of perfect squares. So you really could go straight into factoring 3t, 3t, because 9t squared is 3t times 3t, and the 16, the square root of 16 is 4. That's be 4 and 4. Be a negative here. That means one has to be negative and one has to be positive. So when you have the difference of perfect squares, it's great because you can go, they look exactly the same except for one's negative, one's positive. Now solve for 0. Well, -3 can't equal 0, so that's not possible. I'm going to switch my pencil possibly. And then we have 3t minus 4 equals 0, so 3t, whatever, 3t minus 4 equals 0, and 3t plus 4 equals 0. That means one of these can be 0 at a time. So when you do a two-step equation, you're solving for t. So t can equal a positive 4/3, or t can equal a negative 4/3. Just be careful. So it can equal positive 4/3 or negative 4/3. The reason being is because these are exactly the same except for one's positive and one's negative. Now when you do this, just don't say positive 4. Some people are used to that. But you have a 3 here, so you do need to divide by that 3. So if you test it, if you put those back in and test it, they should both work if you want to test it. Okay, now this one. Notice this is not already equal to 0. This one was. This one's not. So what you want to do is you want to make that equal to 0. So I'm going to make 3x cubed plus 18x squared plus 24x. And I'm going to put it in descending order. So I'm going to just put it at the end. Then you want to take out, now notice you can take out the greatest common factor. Notice there's x that you can take out of each one. Also 3, 18, and 24. What's the common factor of all three of those? Well, 3. So the greatest common factor, and I would take out a 3x, because you can take out an x in each of these. So that means that's going to be x squared plus 6x plus 8. Now, this a term is 1. That a term is 1. So you really could go straight into factoring. You're looking for numbers that multiply to get 8, but add together to get 6. So here you are looking for two numbers that multiply to get 8. So think about the factors of 8. 1 and 8, 2 and 4, and that's it. So the only two that are going to work are 2 and 4. So this x squared is going to be x and x, because of x squared. Then 8 is going to be 2 and 4. But look at our signs. This is a positive. The only way you can have a positive 8 when you multiply is if both of them are positive or both of them are negative. But the only way you can get a positive 6 if you add is if both of them are positive. So that has to be both positive. Meaning, you guys, what you can do is if you FOILed this back out or did the table, you should get this. Then if you distribute the 3x, then you should get this. So what we're doing is just going backwards now. Now we have our trinomial, and we're trying to factor it down to where we can't factor it anymore. We're just getting linear functions here. Now you can solve for x. Now notice there's an x on the outside here. That means that can be 0 too. So you have 3x equals 0. You have x plus 2 can equal 0. Or you can x plus 4 equals 0. So at any time, any of these could be 0. So that means x is going to equal 0. X is going to equal a negative 2. Or x is going to equal a negative 4. So x can equal, in this case, 3 different numbers. This has 3 different roots. And when we start graphing, that's where it's crossing the x-axis at these 3 numbers. Okay? All right, now this one, x cubed minus 121x equals 0. Okay, already equals 0, so that's nice. But now I look to see, is there a greatest common factor that I can pull out? And there is. Notice both of them have the x. So I'm going to take an x out. So I have x squared minus 121. Okay, now, it's a binomial, it's subtraction, and I look to see if they're perfect squares, and they are. This is like a 1x squared, 121. That is a perfect square, meaning there is a number, a whole number times itself that gives you 121. So you have x, this x and x, because x squared is just going to be x and x. That's the only way you can get x squared here is if you have x and x. Now, 121, perfect square. The square root of 121 is 11. In order to have a negative and no middle term, that means that has to be a negative and that has to be a positive. If you foiled that, you would lose your middle term. That would cancel out. Now you have 3 answers. You have x equals 0, you have x equals a positive 11, and x equals a negative 11. So you have also 3 roots there. This one did not have 3 roots because there's no variable on the outside here. But there was a variable of the x on the outside here. That means that could be 0. All right, now this one. So our word problem. So we're looking for the volume of 768 of this rectangular prism. So the volume of a rectangular prism, you would find it by length times width times height. So I always start with kind of a formula. How would I solve it if I was looking for the volume? So now the volume is 768, so I'm going to put 768 for the volume. The length, the width, and the height. The length, the width, and the height. So our width. Now, it's okay. It's all multiplication, so really the way you write it here is going to be okay. I mean, if you have a different order, that's fine. So you want to do length times your width times your height. Now, here's the deal. There's 3 things that you're multiplying. You can't multiply all 3 of these at one time. You got to multiply 2 and then multiply the other one. So what you can do is, and no matter how you do it, it's fine. You can move them around if you want to multiply these 2 first and then distribute. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to move these around and put my W at the end. You don't have to do that. You can do it either way. Now, you can do the table format when you do this or the FOIL. I like to FOIL. Just that's what I grew up doing. So, but if you do the table format, you have W and a 4. Ooh, that's bad. My pencil's running out. So you have a W and a positive 4, and a 16 and a negative W. So that's where you got to be careful if you're doing the table. That's where some of you are messing up. I'm going to FOIL. So I have 16W first, outer, negative W squared, inner, last. But I still have a W here. So I'm going to move this over. So you need to distribute this W to each of these terms. Now, you know what? Before I do that, I'm going to combine my terms. So I'm going to put it in descending order too. There's a lot. Negative W squared plus 12W plus 64 times W. So I'm doing each step so I can see what I'm doing. I'm combining my terms. I'm putting in descending order. Now I can distribute that W to each term. So a negative W squared times W is going to be a negative W cubed plus 12W squared plus 64W. Then from there, now I need to bring that 768 over here because I want it to equal 0. So all of this stays the same, minus 768. Then, now you have 4 terms, and you can't factor out anything. So I'm going to group the first 2 and the last 2. So I'm going to go ahead and group these 2, and I'm going to group these 2. Now, if you don't like the 0 here, you can put that at the end, which I'm going to actually do. Here, I'm going to go ahead and factor out the greatest common factor. Notice this is a negative in the front. When your leading coefficient's a negative, go ahead and factor out that negative with it. It makes it easier. So notice there's a W squared. So I'm going to factor out a negative W squared. So you're going to have a W minus 12. If you do and divide this by a negative, that's going to be a negative 12. Now 64 and 768, if you do real quick, 64 times 12, that should be, you're hoping, that is going to be 768, and it is. So that means I can factor out a 64, a positive 64. So I'm going to get 12, or W minus 12, and that's what you want. You want these two to be the same, equals 0. I'm going to move that 0 at the end. Now I'm going to have a negative W squared plus 64. W minus 12 equals 0. Now here's where, this is a negative W squared, so I'm going to go ahead and take out that negative 1, and you're going to see something when you do that. My pencil's really getting dull. So now look at this one. You have a difference of perfect squares because it's a W squared minus 64. So you really have now W minus 8, W plus 8, W minus 12 equals 0. That's a difference of perfect squares. So the only way that can happen is 8 and 8, negative and positive, and then W squared. Now solve for W. So W can equal positive 8, a negative 8, or a positive 12. Ooh. Okay, so that width can either be an 8 or a 12. But this is where you need to go back to here. A few facts about the door. The length is longer than the width, and the height is 1/4 the size of the length. And I told you here, you didn't need these two facts until the end. Now you need these facts, and you got to decide on which one we want. So, the length is longer than the width. So, if the length is longer than width, if the width is 8, 8 plus 4 is 12. If it's 12, okay, that's going to fit both. So let's look at this. The height is 1/4 the size of the length. The height is 1/4 the size of the length. So 16, if we did 16 minus 8, that's going to be 8. And then 8 plus 4 is 12. That's not going to be 1/4, so let's try 12. If the width is 12, 16 minus 12 is 4. And 12 plus 4 is 16. So those are that is 1/4. So that means the width, that has to be our answer. Width is going to be 12. The height is 1/4 the size of the length. So if 12, that's going to be, the length is going to be 16, and the height is going to be 4. That's why 16, 12, and 4 is your actual answer, not with the 8, and whatever that's going to be. 8, 8, and 12. Yes, mathematically it'll work, but that's why we put that in there, so it clues you into just one answer. Okay, I hope that helps. If you want, the other versions are online too.